for the birthday girl.
I love sashes.
You're turning 30. You're turning
my
30
birthday.
this week.
When I was younger, I definitely did not want to turn 30. But now I'm like, turning 30 is really, really awesome.
Yeah.
You know, you really just come into yourself. You really feel very powerful.
I feel like I should reintroduce Puni. Puni is a fabulous floral sculptor, floral designer.
Wow.
What exactly were you doing when you were 25?
Well, I was unemployed for a year during the pandemic. I was very confused. I remember during that time, once I left that job, I was crying a lot, I remember, because I just felt like I was just going to be mediocre. I realized that there is so many chapters in your life that you are going to go through. Things will change, and you're not even 30 yet. Should I ask my mom to come eat this? Mm-hmm. Should we interview her a little bit? She was my first employee back in 2022 when I first started Puni Petals. So it really started off as a mother-daughter business. I spent all of last dinner and then almost all of this morning making her a dating profile.
Oh my goodness. If you guessed Puni would be back on the show, you would be correct. I went just guessing Danny.
Nobody. I was going to say, sorry, it's not Danny, you guys.
But actually, the reason why I have Puni back is because you're turning 30. You're turning
my
30
birthday.
this week.
It's my birth week. That is
Yeah.
right. It's my birth week. It's so exciting. Well, it's funny because I never was the kind of person who liked birthday, or I didn't grow up liking birthdays very much. But I think as I got older, I just realized that birthdays could be really, really fun. Especially maybe the past 5 years, I've really enjoyed my own birthday when normally, you know, it's just a very, don't look at me, oh, I'm so shy, like, you know, kind of thing. But I think definitely since, you know, 25 or even 24 onwards, I started really finding a lot of joy in growing up. And I just feel like, you know, mid-20s through to your late 20s and then entering your 30s is actually a really, really fun time.
That really encourages me because I turned 25 in July. It's like,
you know, I really do feel like it's such a good time to, I think maybe we talked about this last time too, right?
You said, I remember you said that once you reach 30, you're really excited to when you're reaching 30 because you get a software upgrade.
Yeah. That's a Gwyneth Paltrow quote.
Really?
Yeah. It's from Gwyneth Paltrow's episode on Call Her Daddy.
Oh.
And she talked about getting
I
a
did
software
hear that
upgrade every 10 years or even 5 years or something. Every 10 years you get a software upgrade and then you just like become like a newer version of yourself.
Yeah.
And you become more secure in your identity and like what you want and your boundaries and things like that, which I think has really happened for me maybe in the and I think
So
it will
you've been feeling
continue to be that way, I think, as I get older, I hope. I think 27, 28, 29 has been definitely a really great like couple years of like coming into myself and becoming a little bit more well-rounded and more confident and all that stuff.
I am excited to hear that because I always feel like your early 20s, you're supposed to start feeling things. And like, yes, I have, I think in terms of achievements and just accomplishments or challenges in life. And I think for the longest time, I felt like my growth in my 20s was stunted from my diagnosis of PCOS. I just feel like it really held me back on like, I can't be doing this or I can't be eating that because because I'm sick. And so I feel like when I'm turning 25 now, but I was diagnosed 2 years ago. And I feel like the first year was definitely not the best year. I always see myself as a very, like, we're both very hee ha ha girls. If you want to know the reference, listen to the first episode we did in October, actually. And I did a two-part episode with Puni. The first, it was a sit-down conversation. The next part, we were flower arranging. So she got 2 episodes. Anyway,
So
and now she's getting her 3rd episode. But yeah, I remember my first year being officially diagnosed. Like I already had so many symptoms before, but sometimes it's like when a person receives an official diagnosis, whether it's a good thing or not, you feel better because there's finally a term.
I was gonna say, like, question, hand raised. Wait, so you feel like, because like medical trauma is such a thing too that people don't talk about, is like that journey before you get diagnosed is so confusing and probably so painful physically and emotionally, and figuring out what you have and why you're like tolerating all these pain that could be like definitely just chronic and just daily sometimes. And figuring out what you have, getting diagnoses that's not right and things like that, and you feel like afterwards you're just feeling a sense of relief, right?
It definitely is it's definitely a long journey, because I was definitely not diagnosed until I had to ask the gynecologist, like, is this PCOS? And the male doctor was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, you could have told me, instead of just kind of brushing it off. But anyway, that first year, it was just a whole adjustment period. I felt very divorced from my body. At times I still do. There's a lot of symptoms that I won't really get into, but you can search it up.
Did you feel like you got gaslighted a little bit into, or I don't know, because I know somebody who was also chronically ill, and before that, I think they went through a series of doctors and diagnoses, and they're just like, something's wrong and this is not, what it is. And everyone's just like, eh.
Yeah, I think definitely surroundings, and also I definitely gaslit myself as well. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal, because everyone just says just exercise more and eat less. But for a PCOS woman, that is the worst advice you could probably give her. Really? Because I was dealing with so much inflammation. I was dealing with like cystic acne. I like had gained so much weight, and I was feeling fatigue after so many hours of sleep. And it was a period of time that first year, or I'm not an emotional person, or at least outwardly, even like I don't really get in my feels a lot. But then I look back at that time and I'd be crying myself to sleep consistently. And so looking back, I'm just like, well, Melissa, it's because, hormones are crazy. And I was definitely feeling that. And it was also like emotional trauma from PCOS. But just after those 2 years, it's still like, I'm still in a very long healing journey. But the reason why I bring back to the topic of turning older and maybe getting a software upgrade, I have noticed that also from doing this podcast has brought me so much joy. And I think sometimes joy is like the best medicine, which I hate saying. But it really is. I feel like the less you worry, the better I get. It's just like, I worried so much about my health and like, the medical expenses, the doctor's visits, the blood draws, the supplements I have to shell out. But then,
100%.
But once I'm like, I hang out with friends, I'm very disciplined on what I eat. And so that's like already a given. And just as long as like I'm just happy, or if I'm less worried about my diagnosis, I feel like things are getting better. So I'm looking forward to 25 to 30 for me. Yeah.
And I will say that stress really does.
Stress
kills you. Stress kills you, because I took a class in college up in Syracuse only about stress one time. I was a psych major, and we had this class one semester only about stress and cortisol and how it messes up your body, and it is a hormone that is chemically induced when we are back in our primal days. If a tiger or a lion was running after us, we needed those hormones to like kick in so we can fight or flight. But nowadays, obviously, we're not living in the jungle anymore. We're not running away from all these predators anymore, but we have instead these chronic kind of threats of like, how do I pay rent, and like, job security, and like all these things that feels like your body still feels like a tiger is chasing after you, but it's not. But you're not operating in reality like that anymore. So like prolonged stress is really what kills you. There's a really good book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Sapolsky that's really good. Really? I have it from my college days, but I remember it being very, very useful. I really, really enjoy it. It's just about stress and the causes and effects of high cortisol for prolonged periods of time.
Managing your stress, very important. I know many people listening, they're in their 20s, they're hustling, but health comes before everything.
Yeah, this is very true. I feel like as I continue to get older, back to getting older, is I do try to think that I like to manage my work-life balance very well too. I think it's really important. I know some people, like my brother, for instance, he's such a workhorse and a workaholic, and I think it like catches up to you.
Yeah.
Like it really does.
It does.
Like I think he works himself to the bone. He, I mean, has a really successful business now, but I always feel like I personally like to make sure that I don't get into the traps of just working way too much, that I don't take care of myself.
Yeah.
You know, I got injured a little bit early
Yeah.
on 2 years ago, last year, when I first started doing Puni Petals. And then last year, I think I had gastritis from working too much and not eating the right amount and not.
Yeah, because sometimes you just skip a meal.
Yeah, because like my job is so physical and I'm just like running around all the time, and it's not like I'm like on a computer and I'm working and I can have lunch at my desk, you know. I'm always doing something all the time with my hands, and I'm walking, and I can't sometimes eat, or I forget to eat often. And I think this time last year I had gastritis a little bit because I wasn't eating properly, or I would have prolonged periods of time where I did not eat, which is very, very dangerous.
Yeah. I'm entering my soft girl era for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And I feel like I should reintroduce Puni for the new listeners. So I got a couple of new listeners recently from Angelica's episode. She's a wonderful lady who works full-time at YouTube and is also a full-time content creator and bought a house at 24 last year.
What
a hook. What a hook. Go listen to that.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I'm going to
She's like 25. Yeah.
How do I buy a house at 24?
In this economy?
In this economy?
She has two full-time jobs though. But I was telling Angelica, I was like,
take care of yourself.
Take care
Angelica.
of yourself. Yeah. But wow, she's definitely a workaholic. But Puni, reintroducing Puni, is a fabulous floral sculptor, floral designer.
Wow.
I mean, I remember the first time I talked to you, I was like listing your clients. It ranges in like designer and beauty and lifestyle wellness. And that client list has obviously grown over the since last time we talked to. Yeah, you've been doing this full time since 2022 or 2021?
2 years now.
For 2 years now?
I would say that my big rush was Mother's Day 2022.
Yeah.
Post-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yesterday was Mother's Day. So another little, it feels
Yesterday
full circle,
was
right?
Mother's Day. That was so, yeah, I know. It's definitely, I don't know when the official Puni Petals birthday is, but I usually try to, the big tent pole is Mother's Day. And my mom's here.
Yeah, I know, she's in the background. She'll say hi later.
She's so fun. She
yeah.
just came in from Thailand.
So Puni's turning 30.
My birthday is on May 19th,
the 19th.
but I'm having a party on May 18th on Saturday. It's a luncheon because I made the adult decision that I did not want to, have a night party or dinner and then maybe I have too much wine and then I wake up on my day one of being 30 not feeling 100%. So I don't even think that I'm going to be providing any alcohol, but that could change. I think people are bringing wine, which I love, but I am definitely not trying to party. That's why it's just a picnic. It's a park hang. It's just
I'm
a
very
picnic.
excited. I've been invited. It's going to be so nice. So I'll be there on Saturday.
There's going to be catering and there's going to be a very nice tablescape. Yesterday, I went to the park to pick out the tree that we're going to be under. Because I'm like, it has to be a nice spot, because I'm like, I went location scouting with my mom yesterday just to be like, should we go here or this corner? But then it's like, if you take a picture, there's going to be the tennis court in the back and it's not nice. Gotta think about these things.
Yeah, producer Puni. The wheels were turning in her head. Okay, so that's very exciting. Also, to celebrate Puni's birthday, we have a cake.
So fun.
I hauled ass from Highland Park, or I'm dog sitting right now, to the Pacific Palisades, which is like from East LA all the way to like West LA to get this cake. Because as a PCOS girly, I have to eat gluten-free, dairy-free, refined sugar-free, preferably grain-free because I'm insulin resistant. But we have this wonderful business called Sweet Laurel, and we got their lemon coconut cake.
Wow, I'm so excited.
Yeah, because they had a carrot cake, and then they have a lot of different flavors, but I was stuck between... I wasn't stuck. I already knew the answer, but it was between lemon, coconut, and carrot. But I was like, I feel like this is such an island girl kind of vibe.
We're island girls.
Oh yes,
We're both
island girls. And I feel like
and we're both curly perm girls now.
Yeah, the
too.
first time I interviewed Puni, I still had straight hair. Okay, here we go. Cake reveal. Be ready. Oh wait, we have to take it. Oh, maybe this way.
Oh my God, so cute.
Maybe we should put it on that big.
This is also a shout out to, or a callback to our old episode, our first episode together where I made a cake last time.
Yes,
I made a strawberry shortcake.
Lovely strawberry shortcake.
Yeah.
It was, I will say, incredibly glutinous and dairy. full. And so that's why I was like, I had a few bites of it, but I was like,
did you feel terrible afterwards?
I felt fine. I felt fine. I think I grew like a couple of zits, but they went away afterwards. But I was like, it was actually a really good cake though. So, but then I was like, if I want to have a complete slice, I need to get this cake. Okay.
You want to do the honors and get the plastic off?
Yeah. Okay, let's do that.
Ooh.
No, it's your cake.
No.
Okay, well,
it's our cake.
Actually, well, now that you say that, the thing that I wanted to talk about is that this Friday also marks the 1-year anniversary of Happy Hour. Isn't that crazy?
Happy Hour. That's so amazing. You're doing so well. Honestly, I am so proud of you. I don't know if, I'm sure people have told you that, but I also want to add to that list and say that I'm so proud of you. You are so hardworking, and
It's been so fun.
you know, I feel like if people haven't listened to the other episodes yet, definitely go and listen to all of Melissa's episode, because she is a wonderful host. She does her research, and her interviews are always funny as hell. She's funny as hell.
Yeah,
If
the
you're
guests
not
really help a lot.
following Happy Hour Pod,
Yeah.
at Happy Hour Pod,
hAAPI.
hAAPI. That's right. And also follow It's Cho Train.
That's me.
Her personal account is so friggin' funny.
Yeah, my story.
I love your content.
I don't have a
so
close
much.
friends list. I just put
You're
everyone
just,
on.
everyone's
my
on
stories.
close friends. I love
Yeah.
that so much.
Perfect. Okay, so now we have this. We are going to up the ante this round, and we're going to be floral designing on the cake. So that's why we have a lovely selection of flowers here that Puni has curated. I forgot something that I need to also give to you.
What?
Okay, I'm the friend that brings props. Let me explain.
I love prop. I'm such a prop girl.
To celebrate Puni's birthday, this is for the birthday girl.
I love sashes. This is so awesome.
Let's pin this.
Thank you so much.
You should wear it on Saturday.
I will. I love sashes so much. They're so great.
The amount of sashes I have purchased on Amazon Prime for people is like actually ridiculous.
Do you like sashes?
I have made sashes from scratch as well, like for celebrations and everything.
It's so crazy.
Okay.
She does everything. There's nothing
Well,
that
this
she
is such a
doesn't
nice
do.
pin. Look
This
at
is
that.
a really nice pin.
Okay. Well, happy birthday to the birthday girl. Miss Puni Petals.
My mom's like clapping in the background.
Oh my gosh, it matches the outfit really well.
I love it.
Okay.
I love sash. This is the first sash I've ever worn, actually.
Well, I'd love to know, since the last time we talked, and we have hung out a couple of times between before and now. Like, actually, guys, I do hang out with my happy hour guests, and I've become good friends with them.
She really does.
Well, but tell me some of the highs and lows that have happened from the first time we talked till now.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. I mean, the high is that Puni Petals is still alive and thriving.
Yes.
That is something that I'm grateful for every single day.
You're on Vogue.
Oh yes! Oh my God, that is so funny. I mean, I feel like the highs and lows this past year, there's been so many. And honestly, now that you like put me on the spot, I can't really name any. But you did just mention that we were on Vogue last month, Vogue weddings, for a beautiful wedding that I did back in October in Santa Barbara. And I think the highlight of that was that I got to make these really fun boutonnieres that I think people ended up really loving. I want to say as a caveat, any kind of social media, and people know this already, it is a highlight reel, whether it be your personal Instagram or your work Instagram or your business Instagram and things like that. Puni Petals as a small business has grown so much. And of course, you know, I put all the highlight reels up there, and I think I get a lot of messages of people being like, oh my God, it's so big and that's so crazy. You've done so much. You've grown so much. But, you know, I also do not put up the lows of it too, of like, you know, how hard it's been to being thrown into the fire and start this business like from scratch without knowing anything. And then, you know, luckily, you know, I've had a lot of help and support with like people who work with and for me along the way, and I'm super grateful for that. But I think people also don't know that I had it's actually so funny because the same week as the Vogue feature, the week before that, I had my first ever refund request. Like, it was very shocking. I've never had that happen before, but there was a couple things. But I know why. I mean, it was definitely upsetting, and I definitely cried quite a bit when I received that message that a client was unhappy and disappointed with my work. But I also, and you probably remember this a couple months ago, my grandmother passed away. So I was on the first plane back to Thailand to attend her funeral, which I also did flowers for. That was also kind of like a bittersweet high, honestly. I had it was a really nice tribute to her. I think that also coincided with a very big wedding that I had. Unfortunately, I chose to go back, and I had to hand off the wedding to some of the lead designers that I worked with. But because it was so last minute, all these things happened. And I guess as much as we tried the best of our abilities, of course, it was very much a scramble. And it was hard for me because I wasn't emotionally, physically, mentally had the bandwidth to manage all these things from so far away. You know, Thailand is 12, 13, 14 hours ahead. I would go to the funeral all day. I would pass out at 8 p.m. and I would just wake up at 2 a.m. to talk to people in Los Angeles, do all these work, falling asleep because I was super jet lagged, and then like wake up and then text people and then call people and then like fall asleep again, and then go to the funeral at 7 in the morning. So I was doing that for maybe 4 days because all of this was coinciding all at the same time. Was that this like, I had a couple of big events that same weekend that my grandmother's funeral was going on. So that was really, really intense. But here's the silver lining of it all, is that I do feel like that was definitely a low. When they said that, you know what, like this was not up to par, I was really disappointed that I, you know, didn't live up to the client's expectations and things like that. And that was a first for me. But all you could really take from these things that happen to you is that there are no mistakes. There are only lessons, right? So like, even if I had to choose again, I would still go home. You know, it wasn't like, it was almost a non-starter for me to, you know, miss my grandmother's funeral for my job. You know, I have the rest of my life still to work, hopefully, and this is the only grandmother that I had left, and my family's important to me. So I took that flight, went back, and if I had to do it all over again, I still would. But I guess what it did teach me was articulation, communication, managerial skills in a much higher scale. So I think that was a really big lesson for me in how to delegate and articulate how things were going to look, so it looks like Puni Petals style, you know, so it's in line creatively with what I do. But again, the circumstance of that was very last minute, was very, you know, again, I was also going through a lot with the funeral, and I was very far away. The time difference was really tricky, and I was just exhausted, you know. But so I think the moral of the story for me and how I would like to approach life, you know, as I do now and moving forward, is that it's just about doing your best, you know, right? Like I feel like if you did your best and it wasn't good enough, it's okay. Like there's times, there will be another time that you can do this. And if it wasn't as good as you want it to be, then there's always going to be room for improvement, and change and development is always a good thing. You know, I always welcome that. Key learnings are great. And as long as you did your best, then there's nothing else that you could do, you know? So I really felt like it was really tough, and it was definitely the lowest of lows in the journey of Puni Petals. But I really felt like I learned a lot, you know? Without it, I feel like I might have missed a really big lesson in how to run a business, how to manage my team, and how to manage client expectations and things like that too.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes those moments where you have to like take a break and kind of take stock of how to approach a situation or in the future. I mean, at the beginning of the year, we were both in Asia. You're in Thailand.
Yeah.
And I was in Taiwan. And so I think that was pretty much a high, like to go back home at the beginning of the year. I think it was definitely, we can both agree on is like a really good high. And I remember being in the beginning of the year is when one of my episodes was starting to perform exceedingly well. It was that episode with Justin Chen, who was the co-star with Michelle Yeoh in that Netflix series, The Brothers Sun. Yeah. And I had interviewed him in September. Well, the episode came out in September and the show hadn't come out yet. So the episode performed well, but it was only when the show came out in January that suddenly I looked back at my YouTube episode. Oh yeah, we can still continue the follows. Yeah. I looked back at my YouTube episode and like it was just racking up thousands and thousands of views. And I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. And I received overwhelming positive responses, which, you know, obviously is great to hear as someone who runs the show and who's the face of the show. But then that was also my first time where I started to receive some hate, actually.
What hate? Oh my God, you're right. Oh my God, tell them.
Wait, did I tell you?
I know, I was following very closely on your Instagram. Right? Are we talking about the same hater?
Well, so there were actually multiple haters that had multiple that had different hate comments. And so that's just the thing, like,
rude.
Just no matter what, no matter how hee ha ha you are, like people will find a reason and a way to dispel negativity on you. Like that's just the way humanity is. It's
their
so bleak.
Problem. You know what I mean? And like, it's just so crazy. I mean, the internet, it could be a really wonderful place sometimes, but also just be a really spooky place like that.
I remember, so there was one comment where I had posted an episode at the end of last year, and this guy essentially like said that like I'm ugly and that she only has a career in radio, obviously. Oh, and so
what a friggin' moron!
And I wanted so bad to respond to that person, but then I also came to terms that, I mean, if you respond, you've given him what he wants, which is the attention. But, you know, I thank him for improving my algorithm and increasing my engagement. So
we need to destroy him.
And I remember you messaged me. You were like, let's
destroy him.
But I remember I was like, you know what? Obviously, just let it go. But then the other couple of negative comments were from my episode with Justin Chen, where most of them were overwhelmingly positive. But once you have, this is with psychology, once there is one negative, not so nice comment, for some reason, your mind automatically thinks that, oh, that comment must be right. So we're going to fixate on that comment versus the 99.999% of the positive comments. And
well, it's like a survival. It's like a human survival instinct, because if you're like out, like anthropologically, if you're out picking berries and all the berries were good, but there's one poisonous berry, you know, back to our primal days.
The psychology expert right here.
That could kill you. That could mean life or death. And I feel like, again, in our brain, in our animal brain, we still apply that same psychology chemically even to these things. So like you said, 100 bad comment or 100 great comments, one bad comment, and you really only fixate on that.
Exactly. And yeah, I fixated on it too, because this is the reputation of my show. And because that one, it was not even a backhand, it was more of like a critical feedback. And because of that, suddenly some of the comments that came after slowly evolved to more negative ones. And like, essentially it's like, now that I review them, I think it's just like men just don't like it when women talk.
What were
They'd
they
be like, this
saying?
woman needs to speak less. And they'd be I mean, like, there were some men and women alike who were just like, she talks too much on the show. And
It's a talk show? Like, what? I'm so confused.
And I did take stock. I feel like, of course, I want to be mindful of not hogging up the conversation. That is, of course, what my goal is. But at the same time, I think what I hope for a lot of people to understand about a podcast is that it's not a CBS morning segment where you only have 90 seconds to talk about a news package. And I'm saying this because I studied journalism at school.
Yeah.
And when we had to report a story, we only had a time cap of 60 seconds to report something. So the host is not going to have much airtime. You know, when you're interviewing someone, let's say if I'm interviewing Justin for CBS Morning, oh, how was it like working with Michelle Yeoh? And it'd be him most of the time talking. Whereas in a podcast, I could take between an hour and 2 hours.
Yeah, and that's where you really get deep, and that's where you don't, I feel like podcast is such a wonderful platform to be able to slow down and dig deeper and say more and all these, and have an actual conversation that could be off script and just like, more...
Yeah, just more
curious.
Uncut.
And I think that is actually a wonderful, these people just don't know what the platform is for.
I think people sometimes have maybe some difficulty adjusting to the format of a podcast, perhaps. The thing that I learned before I plant this down as my manifesto is that I don't need to agree to certain comments that are made at me. And that is also a way to train myself to step away from people-pleasing tendencies, which everyone has to varying degrees. And I feel like starting off in my career, working in these media companies and making shows that are given feedback by higher ups, it's like I always want to cater to their vision, but at the same time, it's like sometimes I just need to know thyself. You just need to know thyself.
Yes.
And know that
do you.
Yeah, and just do you, literally. That's just in plain simple words. Oh God, we're gonna put this in.
Yeah. That's so cute. That's so cute.
Look at it.
Oh my goodness.
The cake.
It's so adorable. What a quirky cake.
What other new clients did you onboard? You have aren't you on a contract with
Oh yeah. White Fox.
White Fox.
Yes,
White Fox.
I am on an exclusivity contract with White Fox. White Fox Boutique is a fashion brand from Australia.
Yeah, from Down Under.
Yes, from Down Under. They do a lot of events here, so I have just been working with them quite a bit, and I think I just was like, hey, should we just make this a regular thing, and then I can give you a little discount, but you only use me.
And also the thing I learned from Puni is also any other aspiring entrepreneurs, you ask ChatGPT to make a contract for you.
Oh my goodness, it is so funny, because I was like, yeah, let me send over. They're like, yeah, we can do that. And I'm like, yeah, let me send over a contract real quick. And I was like, no idea how to do that. And I did talk to a couple people, and they're like, ChatGPT. And I was like, wait, what? And I will say that I am actually very late on the ChatGPT train. I think a lot of people use it on the daily. Asking questions. It's almost like an equivalent of Google
for
sometimes.
Interviews.
Yeah. And I actually have never used it before, and it was the first time was making this floral exclusivity contract for my client, and it worked really well. I did have a attorney friend do a once over really quickly just to make sure that the language is looking nice and good, and there's no discrepancies or things like that. But yeah, it worked really well. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend ChatGPT.
Love.
Yes.
I would like to share one of my highs. Again, another one of my highs is from the show, and I've also talked about this at my end of year episode last year, is that the people I've met along the way, obviously. So
it really is about that.
This show is expansive. Like, not only just in terms of expanding the happy hour community, but it's also expanded my life. So just saying that, like, for example, like, I'm good friends with Danny, and I'm in his friend circle. Like, and then once I had you on the show, it's like I've hung out with you on separate occasions, and then
you hung out. Did you hang out with Mindy?
Yes, I did. And so, okay, so Puni invited me to her end of year dinner party before she departed to Thailand. And it was Saltburn themed, and I was not on theme because I didn't watch the movie. I didn't watch the movie yet.
Girl loves the theme, but it's not like, you know. Yeah, I just like to have a theme.
She doesn't press about it, but she likes to at least put the option there. But people like came dressed up nicely, and it was you definitely had like a very long table here in this living room, and I met so many lovely people. And also it's because you're such a master curator that affects people on how they're going to react or speak to people. Anyway, so I met a lot of great people. And one of the ladies I met is Mindy, who is the creative director of I Love Creatives, a wonderful studio agency here based in LA. And because
such a good resource too.
She's super awesome. And I went to her birthday because I met her at your event. Also, I had no idea that she was turning 30. Like everyone in the room, like they were people in their 30s, and I was like, we all literally look the same age. This is crazy, you know?
Well, I wonder if I'm gonna go on a tiny tangent here about age and younger people, like Gen Z people, because you are Gen Z, right? You are.
People think I'm a millennial.
Well, I mean, when does Gen Z officially start?
Like after 1997? I'm not sure.
And when are you?
1999.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I find that the gap between Gen Zs and millennials are very different from how millennials feel with Gen X, right? The generation before, so maybe our parents' generation, because we are more similar in lifestyle and interest and things like that versus how, like, we are not as similar to our parents as far as timeline and interests and things like that. The world has changed and become so much more connected. As millennials, I feel like there's this need, because the generation above us has a very different timeline from us, where they're like working their jobs for like however long, and they work in this one job, and then they have kids, and they get married really young, and then they have kids at like 27 or 28, and then, you know, all this stuff. Where when it comes to millennials, like, our timeline is very different, but the only template that we have is ones of our parents. So sometimes we would be like, you know, like, I'm 28 and like my life is still, so there's like this weird pressure of like, why haven't we figured ourselves out yet? But then we forget that we are so young but we're just comparing our timeline to a different generation that has a very different world from us. And I think that because of like the expansion of like digital media and social media and all this stuff, the world, like, we are more aware and attuned of like how other people are living. And I think that I find that when I talk to Gen Zs, a lot of people, like what you just said, are looking forward to getting older and turning 30 and things like that. Whereas I feel like more so millennials dread turning 30. Like, turning 30 is like, getting older that way is like such a horror. I used to feel like it used to be more the language to feel like, oh my God, turning 30 is such a horrific thing because you're so old and you're not married and like you don't know how, you know, what about your family and stuff. Whereas I feel like now more so people feel less and less inclined to feel bad when they're turning 30 because that's not the timeline that we are on anymore. That's a different generation's timeline. You know, we can't compare us to our parents when they're 30 anymore. You know, like housing prices are different. The economy is different. How people, you know, think about children and family and relationships are different. And I think that people forget that, you know, and I think Gen Zs know that better. And I find it very, very refreshing as I'm turning 30, talking to a lot of Gen Z people, and they say this is so exciting. It's so fun. I'm excited to turn 30, too. And I'm like, that's so awesome, because when I was younger, I definitely did not want to turn 30. Like when I was in my early 20s, I was like, oh my God, like turning 30. Oh, but now I'm like, turning 30 is really, really awesome.
Yeah.
Like I said, back to what we were talking about earlier, it's just like, you really just come into yourself, and you don't, like, I feel like you really feel very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like, okay, just to wrap that up, I feel like Gen Zs and millennials, like, I feel like when Gen Zs look at millennials sometimes, or at least late millennials like me, they feel like that's so funny because they're 30, but they still listen to the same music as I do, and like go out the same way or some people do, go out the same way that I do, go to like fun concerts. Life doesn't just end when you get older, you hit your 30s and then you just don't do anything fun anymore.
Yeah.
I think for our parents, they turn 30, they have 2 kids and a mortgage and all this stuff there's way more things to take care of and think about. Yeah, I think that Gen Zs feel like life doesn't end when you're 30. And if anything, it gets better, because you're like, again, you've become yourself way more. You have like 10 years to grow into your own shoes and understand where your boundaries and limits are. Maybe like get a little bit more ahead in your career, figure it out. Or even if you don't, there is plenty of time.
Yeah.
Because at this day and age, 30 is not old. For our parents, it felt old. Even in Thailand, there is a song that is very popular from my mom's era called 30 Yang Jiao, which means 30 and she's still awesome. And it's a song about the fact that this young boy who's like in love with this woman, but finds out she's 30. And then the whole song is just about like, holy crap, like she's 30 and she's still smoking hot and still so. But I'm like, that is so funny, because back then 30 is so
You're like,
old.
oh my gosh, you're talking about me.
Yeah. And nowadays we play that often at weddings and birthday parties and stuff. It's like basically an anthem for 30-year-olds in Thailand but it just goes to show the difference of perspective and age in different eras of time,
That just reminded me so much, like we were talking about that new movie with Nicholas Galitzine and Anne Hathaway, where he plays a 24-year-old and she plays a 40-year-old, and it's like extremely smutty.
Is that movie good? Can you rate it out of 10?
I'm a very generous critic. I think for a rom-com
person,
I think I have become more so in recent months. But I love a good, love story. I'd probably rate it a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10, honestly.
Do you feel like you're a romantic person?
No. Or maybe I'm not sure how to answer that question. I'm a very practical person. I will say that. But it doesn't mean I'm not romantic, but I just don't know if I am, to be honest.
We all love romance. I mean,
I think I'm very much
to be
more
romanced.
practical.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
A utility gifter?
I am a utility gifter. Yeah. It's like...
Well, you seem to be a thoughtful gifter too, though.
Yes, that is true.
I bet you have like a file somewhere in your notes.
I think I have yes,
good presents to give people, which is so impressive.
Yes, I do write things down. Like, for example, gifts to get, or I like to write down people's names once I meet them. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so bad at remembering names. And I feel like, well, just write them down. Yeah. And I think that's also like a way to develop a more magnetic personality, remembering someone's name. And I think a lot of people think that I am older than I am is because I think there are simple things I do in my life, like remembering people's names or being a very thoughtful gifter. I think that, I don't know, I credit to myself for able to do that.
Well, I feel like you also hold yourself and carry yourself very well too. And I am going to assume that and just make this statement that I actually feel like because you are an international person.
Yes, like we both are.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like
That's true.
International people, you grew up somewhere, you're a third culture kid, and I feel like you have to be able to adapt and assimilate to all these different cultures and how people interact and all that stuff. And then I feel like it creates what's the word? Like you're just a little bit more well-rounded in a way, and
I think so,
there's
yeah.
a lot
Credit
of
my parents to
empathy
that.
and compassion in your interactions and things like that as well. And I feel like, and on top of that, I'm sure being in a place that isn't your own country, not speaking your own language, I feel like there's a lot of grace that comes with it. And I feel like, you know, how you interact, there's a lot of grace and kindness and compassion and all these things. I think that it comes out in your interviews. It comes out in how you know, even outside of the podcast, in our friendship, I feel like you are just a very generous and thoughtful person, which I think that when you're young, and this is not a bad thing, I think it's a very normal thing, you only really have capacity to think about yourself. You know, that's why like young people are so annoying sometimes because they're still trying to figure themselves out. And there's a lot of work, you know, it's a lot of work. And once you figured yourself out, you can kind of think about other people, you know, but I think that young people are bratty because they're thinking about themselves. They're not sure about themselves yet. They're going back and forth. But I feel like maybe for us, being international, being away from our family and being in a different culture and stuff has forced us to maybe think about other people and how we all fit into each other.
Or at least more prone to, because I have people who are in a similar circumstance being international, but it's like they don't
think about other people.
You should know.
Drop a name. I dare you.
So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But I will agree with you with like the 30s thing. So I recently finished watching Sex and the City.
That is so funny. I've been watching Sex and the City for maybe 7 years now, and I haven't finished it yet.
I like finished all 5 seasons. Well, not the new HBO ones.
So
I finished
good,
it in like a month.
It's so good. Well, you know what I think about Sex and the City is that I find it really wonderfully relevant still.
Yeah. And the fact that the show was made in the late 90s when it was not in our generation, but it was just so forward thinking, ahead of its time in terms of like how these women are still relishing in their 30s. Like, yes, they have like love problems. They have a lot of career problems, friendship problems, but looking at the way they live, I think watching that show really made me more excited to be in my 30s. Like, granted, they are living in a very different tax bracket than I am. But also at the same time, Carrie Bradshaw's character, she is very financially not wise and lives a very lavish lifestyle and spends all of her money on her clothes and shoes. So she's maybe not like the best example. However, it's just like the way that these women present themselves, the way that they interact with like men and women and like how they're just navigating the city in their 30s and 40s.
And the things that they talk about, like sex and all these things, like, I mean, I think that was a pretty daunting and like, like it's a very risque subject. And even watching Sex and the City now feels very like, I feel like people are just starting to talk about that, what they were talking about then, you know, like all these subjects on sex and sexuality and even just romance and partnership and open relationships and all that stuff was touched in Sex and the City, which came out in the 90s, you know, and when I listen or when I watch the show, it still feels very current and relevant. And it doesn't feel dated at all outside of the cinematography and all that stuff. It's a very fun show. And I still haven't finished it, but
I love that show. But definitely the characters I would find at many times very unlikable, especially Carrie Bradshaw's character, because she's restless and she's reckless.
Crazy.
But like one of my friends says, my guy friend who loves the show, he's like, oh, we have a Carrie in all of us. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I feel like Carrie is definitely the worst out of all of them. And then I think that I also saw another article that women nowadays, we are all actually Miranda.
Miranda's my favorite.
Yeah, we're all actually Miranda. That
the lawyer.
Yeah, that we are focused on our career. You know, we're pragmatic. And, you know, I think times have changed. Maybe back then that used to be her character trope used to be a little bit of a joke.
In terms like of like the haircuts that they gave her in the show too.
Yeah, this workaholic lady that is like very kind of pragmatic and brash and very like masculine in ways, you know, she's like working in a male dominated field but now we're all her.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like women nowadays are Mirandas. Like,
Yeah. I love that.
Very awesome.
Yeah. Wait, I remember you touched on briefly at the beginning of our conversation when you were 25. Let's do like a time capsule moment. What exactly were you doing when you were 25? Like, I need to know.
Pre-pandemic. So I was working in interiors still.
Yeah.
And then I had left that job early 2020. I think the first week of work from home, I left that job. I remember around that time and being in that job on top of like visa issues and things like that, I had always felt it was a hard time for me. Well, I was unemployed for a year during the pandemic, but thankfully I was taken care of by the government. Thank you very much. But I think I was very confused. I remember during that time, once I left that job, which I already felt this way when I was working there, and the year after that, where I was unemployed and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, I think I was crying a lot, I remember, because I just felt like I was slowly coming to terms that maybe I was just didn't have it in me.
Or you were hitting a wall.
Yeah, that I just didn't have it in me to be successful, or I didn't have anything to offer the world. You know what I mean? I had this very, very toxic thinking or fear, and that I was just going to be mediocre. Like I was really, in my early 20s, I was very, very scared that I would continue on in life and find that I was just mediocre.
Yeah,
and
just
it's
ordinary.
so toxic. It is very toxic. Again, now that I'm 30, I realize, and then Puni Petals happened and stuff like that. Now that I am in my 30s, I realize that there is so many chapters in your life that you are going to go through, whether you like it or not. And things will change, and what you do, how you look at the world, like, will change, and you're not even 30 yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I was in my early 20s, I was like, this is it. I guess I'm not good enough. I'm just going to be mediocre forever. And it was devastating. I was having a really hard time finding a job, and it just like killed my ego. It just felt like, I guess I just don't have it in me, like that spark or whatever people are looking for, that they're not hiring me. And on top of that, the pandemic was going on, and for some reason I just did not take that into account.
Yeah.
Like the world was crumbling at that point, and I was just like,
But yeah, it's like,
but
of course
why?
you'll take it personally.
Yeah,
you
and I was
know?
like, but why does nobody want me? It seems like everybody has a job, but like, why don't I? Like, but like also everyone was getting laid off left and right. But like, again, when you're in your early 20s or mid 20s at this point, you can only think about yourself. You know, like I was only thinking about me, and I was just like, why?
Yeah.
But
the quarter life crisis is just statistically true. I mean, that happened around when you were 25. I mean, there were so many things that you revealed to me just now that I so relate to, that I feel like I have gone through in the past year, because the reason why I started hAAPI Hours is because I could not land a job. I wanted to work so bad in podcasting, and I applied to so many of these podcast jobs. No one took me. But then I think also I understand, because like before hAAPI Hour, I didn't work in podcasting.
Yeah.
I worked at Jubilee, I worked at Wired, I had worked at media companies, but they were not the same space as podcasting. So I do understand that those people, they're not willing to take me on, to trust me like in that capacity. So time and place for everything. But I remember like, it was like
such
very
a catch-22 too.
Yeah.
When you're young is such a catch-22 too, where you're just like, to get hired for a job, they need experience, but when you're not, when you're just came out of college, you have no experience, so they don't hire you. It's like really dumb.
It was definitely ego deflating, because prior to being laid off at Wired, so the reason why I say I'm entering my soft girl era is because ever since college, I've held like a minimum of like 3 jobs, internships and jobs, while I was a double major. And so I was extremely dedicated. I'm very goal oriented, and just wanted to jam pack my life as much as possible. And then my final year of college, I did my entire senior year because I was a COVID college kid. Did my entire senior year in Taiwan, so 15 hours ahead. So my hours were 1 to 9 a.m. and I was a double major, and I was interning and working my on-campus job, which had now become remote.
Crazy.
And I did all of that in a year. And I definitely think that because of that was one of the main reasons that jump-started my PCOS. So the reason why I say I want to enter my soft girl era is because even when I was working at Jubilee, even when I was working at Wired, I still had like 2 other jobs. I was holding a consultancy position with the NAACP, and I was also editing videos for YouTuber clients. And I think when I got laid off, so for that whole year, it was ego deflating because I thought I'm going to find a job right immediately because I worked at Jubilee. I worked at Wired. It should not be hard to find a job. And yet it took me over a year up until recently that I had a development in my career. Like, not even talking about happy hour. Happy hour has given me a lot. But it took me a year as well. And I think it's hard. Also to deal with job instability, to also deal with PCOS and the emotional stuff that comes with it, the financial burden that comes with it. I feel like our trajectory is like roughly, if you squint, pretty similar. Like not finding a job for a whole year and then just like doubting yourself, obviously. But I think that whole year when I started to work less, I was taking on client work, but it was not steady income. During this year, I feel like it was necessary for me to work less because I had come from such a I must do everything. And, like I was very, I feel like I always want to achieve excellence, of course. However, I think the time that I needed to rest was also a time for my body to heal. And so I think that was important. So necessary. And I feel like even though my body's not healed yet, it's still far from it. I feel like I'm at a good point where I'm able to start taking on more responsibility. And life just happens in such a beautiful like stream where I met Mindy I'll tell you this timeline. I met Mindy at your dinner party. After that, at the beginning of the year when I was in Taiwan, I look in her Instagram blurb, in the DM section, you have like a little speech bubble and people will have something for 24 hours. I see her say, if you're an editor, hit me up. And I reached out. I was like, hi, I'm an editor. Hee hee. And I remember she remembered and she's like, yeah, I thought about you. However, I know that you're at home, you're a family. I'm not sure you're still working. I was like, let me know what the project is about. And it's for Dead Cool, the fragrance brand.
Yes.
And so they onboard me to edit their campaign for National Fragrance Day. I edit that campaign. And then also at the same time, I was still, job searching. And I see Dead Cool that they're hiring. And so I apply. Out of 1,800 people, my application was the first one that got fished out. And I go through 4 rounds until recently on Friday. And they know that I edited their campaign. They're like, we'd like to offer you it was like a contract to hire position, but still something after a whole freaking year. I did another interview for another job and I'm still waiting to hear back from them, or I haven't even checked my emails this morning. But for some reason, for a whole dry 1 year career-wise, like 4 opportunities suddenly came at me in like the same month. And so it's narrowed down. It's just so crazy how like all these little people that were like put in my life. It's like, I just happened to meet Mindy at your dinner birthday party. And it's like, I wouldn't have made it if, I hadn't had you on the show. And I wouldn't have had you on the show if you didn't see Danny's trailer and you haven't reached out to me. It's so crazy. So it's like all these months in the making that like lead to somewhere else. I look back and I'm just like, wow. Like, life is crazy.
That's what I'm saying is, again, not that I'm super wise being 30, but there's definitely cycles and patterns that you see. You've now lived long enough or a little bit longer to realize there is no mistakes. Like, there is only lessons learned, and like life just keeps on going and the chips will fall in the way that they're supposed to fall. And, I just feel like you see that happening, and I don't know. I guess some people call this like faith or God, but it's like a weird meta thing, a higher power in a weird meta thing way. I feel like that is my faith. Yeah. Like my faith is in the faith that things will work out.
It's so funny.
I'm not a higher power girl.
So funny is that Puni's Buddhist, I'm Christian, and like we met up the like Easter Sunday, and then we met up for matcha, and then I was like, yeah, I was coming back from church, and then you were like, oh, and I was like, yeah, he's risen, and then
He is risen.
she kept going around the coffee shop telling people like he's risen.
Like for me, I was just like, I like ran into some people at the coffee shop, and I was like, oh my God, happy Easter, he is risen. Like I thought that was like a saying that people just like said, like Merry Christmas. I was like, oh my God, he is risen.
Well, anyway,
like, what?
to celebrate our accomplishments, is this cake ready?
It is ready. I think
Shall we
it's
cut
ready.
into it?
Oh my goodness, I'm so
record this.
excited.
So cute. Wait, so these flowers are not edible, right?
No.
But the blueberry is.
The
okay.
blue is.
Everyone, taste test on the lemon coconut.
Thank you, Laurel.
Yeah, sweet Laurel.
Sweet Laurel. Mmm. 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 This is very, very good. For
I just ate a flower.
gluten-free.
Whoops.
Good.
Yeah. Gluten-free, dairy-free, refined sugar-free, grain-free. When in LA, I'm lucky to be here with PCOS.
Should I ask my mom to come eat this?
But yeah. Oh my gosh, let's go get your mom.
Mama?
I don't know if she's sleeping though. Oh no. Come have cake. Look at this cake. Yeah. Wait, do you want to come in?
We made the cake. You want to come in? My mommy.
Like Puni's mom should say hi. Come in. We'll squish in.
Hi. Should we interview her a little
Yes.
bit?
Wait, so
my first time.
Puni's mom was taking a nap because you're jet lagged, right?
Yes.
Yes.
She just came in from Thailand.
Yeah.
And yesterday was Mother's Day, and you know what I did for her?
Did you guys go to Lolo Wine Bar?
We went to Lolo Wine Bar, yes, but do you know what we did there as her Mother's Day present?
know.
I spent all of last dinner and then almost all of this morning making her a dating profile.
On Hinge?
No, on eHarmony.
Oh.
Just because I feel like maybe the demographic is a little bit better, but I don't know. I would
Maybe
say
she's on
so
Yuzu.
myself. Best Mother's Day gift
go
ever. The most loyal daughter.
We'll cut you a slice. Puni says that I should just call you Mama.
Mama. Yeah, in Thailand.
In Thai, we kind of just call
cute.
everybody whatever they call their parents.
Wait, okay, I'll ask one final question. I'll ask it to Mama. So what do you see in Puni that reminds you of yourself?
Of myself.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll bring it closer to you.
The artist in her, the artistic that the love of beauty, the love of art is similar to me, I think. And some of her lifestyle, I think some part she inspired from me.
Life is her canvas. And I will say something about my mother, right? I think she is also a curator and lover of all beautiful things in life. You know, I think she sees all these small things, and I feel like what she's trying to say is that I think that we're similar in that way. I think the fact that I was, you know, I'm now working in flowers serendipitously. I think I grew up seeing my mom. Well, she's always walking around when we're going on walks and stuff like that. We had a garden, and even somewhere else that's not in our house, we would go somewhere and she would always be picking flowers and like putting all these like small things together, and then bringing them home and then putting them in a vase, because she just like has these, she's so good at curating like the small beautiful things in life, you know, that makes a difference as a whole. She is a curator of all things beautiful. I think there's always music playing in our house all the time. Like when I was growing up, you know, we would always listen to these like world music, and she would be showing us movies from Cannes Film Festival or Toronto Film Festival ever since we were kids. I was watching French movies and Iranian movies and German movies and all this stuff as a young child, because my mom would try to find these movies And it was just like she was such a cool mom from the start, you know, and she was very different from every other mom. And I would just say this, and even my friends know this, you know, that she's a cool mom. She really is. And how she sees life definitely affects how I see life. You know, we would always listen to these like world music where it's just like we would listen to like French music, but also like African music, and also like, you know,
Sundance film,
calypso, Caribbean music, and like
Pajama.
Yeah. She loves these she has a very eclectic taste, and I feel like that kind of had opened up my world very early and very young to appreciate all these things in life that is, you know, small and easily overlooked, but makes it so much better as a whole. Yeah.
That is the perfect way to end this conversation. But, well, I hope you enjoyed this cake.
I enjoy it.
It's
really
lemon
much.
coconut. Yeah.
It's so nice.
But, well, thank you, ladies, for coming on my show. This was so fun.
Thank you for having us.
I hope you guys enjoy the month that you guys have together.
Oh, right? It's going to be so fun.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah. And I will say that she was my first employee. Back in 2022, when I first started Puni Petals, my mom came to visit me right around the time Puni Petals first started. And I was just getting really, really busy then. And I think she was going to come for 3 weeks, and she ended up staying for 3 months because I was getting job after job at the time. And she was I canceled her trip, and I was like, all right, let's, you know, I guess we're just going to do this. So it really started off as a mother-daughter business. And then, of course, she left me. But yeah, luckily I had her to help me and support me in my early days, and I will never take that for granted.
Wow. Shout out to Mama.
Shout out to Mama. That's
Shout out
right.
to Mama.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
I'm
for
so
sure.
proud of you guys. Both.
No, I'm so
you
proud of.
both.
Oh, thank you.
Yay.
You're so good. Bye.
Bye-bye, Mama. Say bye-bye, Leo.